Hello, and welcome to the weekly voice chat of the Men's Human Rights Weekly Chat. We are the semi official server of the men's rights subreddit, and this week's topic is about the men's rights movement in general. What is the men's rights movement? Who are men's rights activists, and what do we actually believe? Because there is so much confusion around MRAs and the men's rights movement. A lot of times you read articles about MRAs and you hear that they're incels or that they're red pill or that they're like Andrew Tate and they're misogynistic. And then you have people saying, no, MRAs are just people who are trying to talk about issues that affect men and boys. We don't hate women. We're not misogynistic. We just want to be heard and we just want the male point of view to be understood. So what is the truth behind the men's rights movement and what is the deal behind MRAs? So this server is an example of a mainstream men's rights server. So if you follow this Discord server and if you follow the conversations in this Discord server, I think you get a pretty good idea of the kind of things that we believe. And you'll notice that for the most part, this server and the people in this server believe in equality for all and basic liberalism for all. And we're not a left wing or a right wing movement, but we are a movement that espouses the common ideas of liberty and the common ideas of liberal values in the sense that we are against discrimination, we are against sexism, we are against homophobia, we are against racism, we are against transphobia. We believe that all human beings should be treated equally and people should not be treated better or worse based on how they were born. Now, as it stands, there are certain laws and certain social trends in the world that disfavor men and boys. There are laws such as conscription, such as pension ages, such as government programs for low-income healthcare, government programs for scholarships, government programs for small business loans, etc., that men are excluded from or that discriminate against men. For example, in some countries, the state pension age, which is the age a person is allowed to retire and collect state pension, is lower for women and higher for men. So if a man and a woman both get the same job at the age of 25 and they work their entire lives for the same salary, the woman can retire at the age of 60, but the man has to keep working until he's 65. These differences in pension ages is actually a very common law in many countries. Even in so-called progressive countries such as Austria, such as Finland, such as Switzerland, you still have male-only conscription, where male citizens are forced to join the military against their will or lose legal rights and or pay extra taxes and or even go to prison. And the men's rights movement is talking about men's issues that often are neglected by the mainstream media and or by feminism. Now, to get to feminism. A lot of people think that the men's rights movement exists as a reactionary movement to feminism. This isn't true. We are not against the women's movement. We are not against the women's rights movement. We're not even against the principle and ideology of feminism as defined of equality. We are against the feminist movement. The feminist political movement has become a collection of organizations and academics who espouse ideas that do not align with equality. And when you look at some of the laws and some of the practices that feminist organizations espouse and support and lobby for, and in some cases have been successful in getting passed into legislation, into law, you don't see equality being achieved. In fact, you see these organizations are campaigning for laws that discriminate against men and enforce inequality. So it's hypocritical when these feminist groups say that they're trying to break down patriarchy and trying to break down stereotypical gender norms when, for example, they advocate for domestic violence laws that state that men are inherently perpetrators and women are inherently victims. If feminists were against harmful gender roles, then they would be against the idea that a man cannot be a victim. But this is not in practice what you see feminists espouse for under law. So the men's rights movement exists to talk about these men's issues that would otherwise go neglected and ignored. So that's the topic this week. We're talking about the men's rights movement. We're talking about what it means to be an MRA. And we really want to hear from you guys, your personal experience. What brought you to the men's rights movement? Why are you a men's rights activist? How did people around you react to it when you told your friends and your families? What kind of response did you get? How has it affected your life, your social life, your dating life, your career? Say as much as you want or not. The floor is open. Enjoy.
Thank you, Blue. Now, Blue may have understated the case a little bit in that the laws around gender are extraordinarily balanced in favour of women and against men. The draft isn't just one of those little boopsie boos that you can, shuffle under the carpet. It's something that is currently killing several million men in Ukraine, and it is a shocking waste of human life. And the media is quietly and carefully stepping around it and making sure that everyone thinks that the main tragedy is the women who are being displaced from Ukraine and who are actually allowed to leave. Another thing that we should bear in mind is that we are essentially having feminism wage war against us is probably the best term, because MRAs, we actually have our roots in the feminist movement. We have our roots in people like Warren Farrell, who decided that he was going to address men's issues as well in his speeches because he was told that feminism was about equality. He did that, and he immediately became that person in the Soviet photos who vanishes, essentially, if you know who I mean. He became a person non grata. He became, well, the entire feminist movement turned against him, and they stopped, they got rid of him as their go-to speaker because he used to fill a role similar to Michael Flood. They got rid of him as everything, really, and he went from making hundreds of thousands of dollars to making nothing, pretty much as a consequence of speaking about men, and very, very quickly. Just everything dried up. And this is a classic thing which happens when you try to talk about men's issues. And I don't think that people, like a lot of people, don't really want you to realize this is the case. And in fact, they want to take people like Andrew Tate and they want to say, look at how much misogyny sells and look how popular it is, when in fact he's hiding in a tiny little corner of the internet. And it's only a few people who know about him. And really, the main reason people know about him is because the feminists complain about him. And essentially what I'm saying here is that what actually sells is misandry. And misandry sells in all of the main media sources. It's the BBC is full of it. Name any network, Netflix, Amazon Prime, you'll find it throughout. You look at any comedy show, you'll find that the dad and the son are stupid while they're both outsmarted by the youngest daughter and snarked on by the mother. It's a classic formula. But if I had to say that the real reason we are essentially at war with feminism is because feminism has concerned itself with destroying the rights of men, not just in small ways, but in massive ways. For example, by changing rape and domestic violence laws to ensure that men are always considered the perpetrators and are never considered the victims. This has, in at least the case of India, caused a situation where boys aged 11 and 12 and younger can be convicted of rape if they are raped by an older girl. This is something we have examples of. We've mentioned it before. But I think that gives you a bit of overview of why this problem is, well, what's going on. But why this problem is occurring is a much larger, a much more in-depth issue that we're going to have to cover throughout this stream. Yeah, see, they're going off in Parliament about Andrew Tate. But what the problem with Tate is, as I've said on YouTube and I've said on Twitter as well, Tate is essentially the last person they couldn't ban after they got rid of all of us, after they got rid of all the moderate voices, shut us down, locked us in a corner. They got rid of all of us, and then who's left? It's the most extreme voice possible. And who do they magnify? The most extreme voice possible. And Andrew Tate isn't even an MRA. Let's be honest here. He's some random VTuber, and he basically, he's just this guy who lifts weights and kickboxes and stuff, and that's about it, really. He has a bunch of opinions, but he's not really tied to any particular movement. I think he's trying to start an Andrew Tate movement of his own, personally, but he isn't really the issue. He's something that's going to come and go. The thing that we really need to think about is why they're reacting like this to this particular guy, and why they're magnifying him. Well, it's quite simple. It's for power. It's because if they point to this guy, they've suddenly got a misogynist who they can rail against, which is what they really want. And I'll show you. This was posted just a couple of minutes ago, as far as I'm aware. Why does misogyny sell? Because there's a market for it. Is there? What market?
I actually responded to that one if you want to see it.
Yeah, I had a look at that. Honestly, this tweet, if you twist it round backwards and say, why does misandry sell? Because there's a market for it, is correct. You see, if you look through her tweet, it's all about her hatred of men. You see, 3 women are killed each week by a man. Okay. Well, murder is a thing that exists, yes. You're not special. More men are killed every week, but we don't go on about it because it's not a contest. But these people weaponize it because they can weaponize sympathy for women because people care more about women. Go on, Straight.
What I want to know, and what I've been looking at the official statistics for it, it's about 2,000 men kill themselves each year from domestic violence. And it could be more, it could be less. We don't know. My question is, how many men kill themselves because they've been abused due to domestic violence each week? I mean, if we insist on making it a pissing contest, that is.
I should imagine most of the people who are committing suicide, I should think, are in 1 or 2 different categories. Relationship violence is a major one. We've got many studies linking it to homelessness and suicide. And I think that we really, really need to push those, because honestly, the feminists love to say that men aren't victims of domestic violence. Well, what do women who are abusers do when they want to hurt somebody? Do they punch them? Well, yes, they can do. They do that. But what's their primary weapon? It's turning other people against you. It's turning the world against you. It's emotional backing you into a corner and daring you to hit them so that they can then accuse you of domestic violence. That's the sort of thing female abusers do. They force you into the role of the aggressor so that they can use it against you. It's a classic manipulator tactic, and manipulation is the weapon of female abusers. Now, I'm not going to say women generally, because women generally aren't female abusers, but female abusers specifically use this as a weapon. And I like to make this clarification because it is one of the biggest things that divides us off from feminism, is that we don't generalize about women. We don't say all women are like this. We say a specific subset of women are like this, and these women are the ones we refer to as female abusers. And these people are, well, they're criminals. And criminals aren't common, but they are there, and they are dangerous, and they do damage people. And they are the bulk of the people who make up like domestic violence cases against men. They are the women who aren't defending themselves, but who are in fact attacking. And M. Painter is actually right. Andrew Tate is chicken feed. The thing that we really have to remember is they want to magnify him because he is a voice who they can easily take clippings of, and he sounds awful when you show him as clippings. I haven't seen his full tracks. I don't know what he's actually like. But they have a selection of really damning sounding clips of him, and they are pushing those as hard as possible because they need to be victims. This is how feminists work, and it's how female abusers work. This is them in action. They take this one guy and they magnify him, and they magnify him because he is the guy they want to use as the face of the men's rights movement. And we already have people on Twitter saying that he is a major MRA. He's not. We've never spoken to him. We are in contact with most of the major MRAs, and we have never spoken to this guy. We have never had any contact with him. We don't have anything in common. We have no interest in contacting him because pretty much everything he talks about is meaningless to us. And yeah, as M. Peter says, he's a bit of a tradcon as well. If you listen to him generally, he is kind of tradcon. And as far as I'm aware, that is another thing that feminists like to push on us. They like to say we're tradcons. We're not. We're definitely not. That is quite interesting they like to say that.
Yeah, one thing I also wanted to note is that usually whenever I look at discourse online, in Twitter or TikTok, they assume that most of us are conservatives, and to me that is odd because I'm personally not conservative, and a lot of men here actually don't like conservatives because in reality conservatives don't want to help men. They sort of gloss over issues that men face, but they don't mind the unfair gendered laws of domestic violence. They don't mind the unfair child custody laws. They don't mind the unfair selective service laws. They don't mind any of it. And this is honestly infuriating to me because the idea of conservatism or tradition sorry, can't English today. But the idea of being conservative does not actually help men at all, and unfortunately, due to lack of representation of men and actual representation of men's issues on the left, you start to see, more men shifting towards extremist, like traditional ideas, which are ultimately harmful to them.
This is because they want a way out of feminism, but the only way they can see is this one. They want basically us, but they have been cut off from us. They don't know about us because of information control in the media and so on. They think we're like the tradcons anyway, and so they go for the tradcons.
And it's I think
Exactly.
I
Sorry,
think
Blue.
it's
Go on.
sorry. I was just gonna say they don't understand what it means to have genuine feelings because they're sociopaths by nature. Like the feminists who are behind the mainstream feminist narratives, the ones who are behind organizations like Now or like the Fawcett Society, people like Clementine Ford, people like Charlotte Proudman. Remember, these people are not wrong, they're lying. It's not that they don't know what they're saying is true, it's that they are intentionally saying untrue things. So, beating them with logic is never going to work. And arguing with them with facts is never going to work because they don't care about facts to begin with. So, you have to remember that when you talk to these people and when you listen to what these people are saying, you're not getting a look at what do they really think about the men's rights movement and what do they really think about MRAs. What you're seeing is how do they think they can twist MRAs in the eyes of the public? What lie do they think they can sell to the public? So, what they're really doing when they criticize MRAs and the men's rights movement, they're not really looking at the flaws of the men's rights movement. They're looking for things they can exploit. They're looking for any perceived weakness that they can twist and turn in their favor. And that's why I preach anywhere that you are, whether it's the lounge of this server, whether it's social media, anything you do, any behavior that you exhibit, any language that you use, anything that you type reflects upon the movement as a whole because they look at everything and they calculate everything and they judge everything. And you will not be judged fairly. The men's rights movement is not judged fairly. So people say, oh, well, by a reasonable standard. We don't get the reasonable standard. We have an extra reasonable standard that we have to abide by. So when you look at them criticizing the men's rights movement, understand what they're doing. They're not really saying, oh, this is wrong. MRAs don't understand this point. What they're doing is they're lying about what that point is, or what that point means, or what we're actually saying.
I mean, not too long ago, I was scrolling through TikTok. Sorry, it's my fault, but um, um, so I was scrolling through TikTok naturally, and I see a lot of these people who don't quite understand what MRA is. They say MRAs are irrelevant because men's rights are a threat, but I've never seen them actually look at any of the arguments, legitimate arguments, the ones that we make, like domestic violence, sexual assault against men, the draft. And even if they do, they sort of have these extremely minimal look at it. Like, oh well, it's a system built by men, so it's men's fault. Or or better yet, men don't make safe spaces for themselves, despite the fact that we did attempt to make safe spaces, but these have been canceled by feminists in the past, and it's quite infuriating to see it. Because what they're trying to do is, and that's something I've seen, and it's starting to, it made me very angry today, is that they never talk about men's issues, right? But the way they're trying to talk about it now is it's sort of this passive aggressive way where yes, you men have issues and problems, but you're also the oppressors, so you need to help us. It's this sort of passive aggressive way, this backwards way of conveying men's issues, and sadly a lot of men start to believe in it just because they don't have anywhere else to turn.
Well, a big part of that as well is like this whole sort of thing that's just going on generally, I'd say socially, especially in like social media, of this idea of we can't help men unless there's like a reason to it, or um an exchange or something. You know, when you see so many feminists, YouTubers or TikTokers, or even just on the news normally, the news channels themselves, Fox News, um, ABC, NBC, BBC, whatever else, anytime they get close to talking about male issues, it always has to start, oh, well, women are affected this way by that, so we have to give males attention because it affects women this way. And so it's this never ending issue that they will not address or take care of men's issues unless it affects females. And then the only way they're going to try and solve the male issue is by whatever way the female determines is going to be the solution, because they're solving it for the female, not for the male.
That's yeah, you like stole it off my tongue. Honestly, that's exactly what it is. A lot of what you said is true. They usually, as you said, they usually only care about it if it helps women, and I honestly never understood that because men's issues are never theirs. You always hear this idea that oh, men need to do better in order for the safety of women. But I hate this, and I was subjected to this line of thought in my school, where there was this incident where a boy in our grade he was allegedly, I'm not sure if it's true or if it's rumors, but let's say he was indeed doing it. He was, I know, inappropriately touching girls or his female classmates, and the rumors quickly spread about, right? And so they took us in with all the male teachers, and they showed us like 1 in 5 statistics that we need to do better. We need to call out each other in what we do, and it had this accusatory tone to it. It's like, what did I do? Why are you making me, instead of telling me like, I don't know, I should spot this behavior and report it immediately, you're putting the problem inside me as a man. And another thing that they said is that if you s- if you see a if you see this happening, or if you see a woman getting harassed or attacked on the street, you'd rather yourself get attacked than her. So they're practically saying that we should be meat shields for women instead of women learning how to properly defend themselves, which I would absolutely defend any woman in need, but I should not be expected to do it. Like, no offense to anyone. So it's this backwards way, as you say, it's this backwards way in which we dismiss men, we treat them as monsters, and an accusatory tone, and then at the same time we say they have issues, then it creates this extremely conflicting feeling to me and to a lot of men.
And I think that's probably because, like, in reality, I don't. It's pretty obvious that feminism isn't really about equality, and when it always comes around to that, um, like the issue of what men are facing, I think instead of actually trying to um, work together to solve that issue or issues, they basically shirk off that responsibility by saying, oh, this issue is, for example, caused by men, so it's only an issue within your group of people, so therefore I don't need to deal with it, or any other list of excuses that they can come up with.
That's just like when racists say black on black violence. They'll literally say man on man violence.
Hi, you just asked me to read something, Ma. I'm looking in the text chat. I'm not seeing the link for what you'd like me to read.
He wants you to read
I
what?
replied to it.
Okay, hold on.
Should
Okay, so Acid Gritana says, assuming about feminists, they say stuff like, oh yeah, men aren't allowed to cry, but it's their fault, while also saying, boys doing worse in education means that they're just dumb. It's not discrimination. Mom read this part aloud. Basically, so this is the paradox, the double standard they have. When women earn less than men in the workplace, it's because of misogyny and sexism. When boys get lower grades in education, it's because girls are smarter than boys. So feminists, whenever there's a social trends where men are ahead of women, feminists say, oh, look, misogyny. Men are ahead of women because of sexism. But whenever you see a social trend where men are behind or boys are behind, feminists say, well, girls are just smarter or women are just harder workers. So feminists are completely okay with excusing inequalities so long as those inequalities favor women. I think that's what you're getting at, Acid. If I'm misrepresenting that, my apologies.
I'm going to try this. But if you get any background noise, guys, just let me know.
You sound clear.
You're good.
Right. The feminist movement has never, ever been about equality. People need to understand that. You go right back to the suffragettes in the UK and what have you, that, you know, they were fighting for the right to vote. But when you look at the people who actually had the right to vote in the UK, they were either wealthy landowners or they were elected officials and what have you. They were the people that they wanted the right to vote with. The people that were fighting in the trenches of World War One did not have the right to vote. The people that died in the boiler room of the Titanic did not have the right to vote. The people that died in the mines in South Wales did not have the right to vote. Feminism has never, ever been about equality, and people really, really, really need to understand that, because one of the most frequent comments you will hear on social media is modern feminism is doing this, modern feminism is doing that. It's been like it from day one. Go and read the full recording of the Declaration of Sentiments in its entirety. It does not make for good reading. It is literally patriarchy theory from day one. And, you know, the reason that we are at war with these people is because we are the counterbalance. We are pointing out all the ways in which society is a mess. Society needs to fix itself. And nobody really wants to listen to us, but they're being forced to, because the men's rights movement has gained traction, really, I think, from the day that the Red Pill documentary was released. Although that was very, very USA centric, it got a lot of people thinking and a lot of people listening. And we've only gone from strength to strength. And it's only going to get better for us, worse for the feminists.
And I think the reason why a lot of people might make the misconception that feminism is helping both genders equally is because, like, a lot of feminism nowadays is definitely leaning on the more liberal side of things. So, like, it wouldn't really surprise me if you ask a feminism that led on the more liberal side of things, and they would respond with something like, "Oh yeah, guys can wear skirts or dresses or whatever the heck," and "Oh yeah, guys can cry or whatever," because that kind of aligns with the liberal viewpoint. But when you really break it down, it's definitely definitely not in favor of the men.
I would say, I think to Mike's point. Oh, sorry, Ma. But to Mike's point, just super quick. I think another thing is too is the hard thing with feminism since the beginning, and this is the never-ending issue of feminism, is you have really two sides to it. You have, as Mike mentioned, the suffragettes, the white feather cap. You have the fact that they were screaming, yelling about rights that the underclass in general already didn't have. And so there's really no equality. But you also had the group that would go with them of people that at that time understood that the underclass couldn't vote as well and wanted to fight for the underclass and for women, but instead of separating themselves, they merged in. And in a way, if you think about it, sort of, I want to say, lost their voice in there. Because that's one of the biggest issues we have when it comes to, people in general coming in the servers. We have people come in, they're feminists, and they are sometimes really trying to help out and learn about men's issues, and they want to really help, but they're so sucked into joining this movement because of the numbers it has and the influence. But their good intentions get drowned out because the people who want to make the actual changes that are needed and the proper change are very few. They're being drowned out by the real intention of the movement that they may not realize. Or if they do, they're just hoping that somehow they're going to be louder than the majority. And as for the current state of modern feminism, it is it it advertises it's more liberal, but it's also starting to fracture because of that liberalism, because there's so many people who don't agree. And frankly, it's mainly fracturing because feminism also started as a movement for women, and they made the really bad idea of trying to claim it was a movement for everybody. And frankly, there is no way they can represent everybody because they only know the leaders, the people who are talking, the experiences of women. The reality is the movements, the change for men has to be determined by men, the change for women has to be determined by women, the change for LGBTQ needs to be determined by the LGBTQ. You can't just have some feminist leader up there who's a woman speaking for all these things at once. Because there's a lot she really doesn't know because it's not her own experience. They need to be separate movements that may work together on some things, but generally they just need to be separated, and they're not willing to accept that because they think they have to be the representers of everything. And that's made them remarkably somehow even more toxic than they already were.
Yeah, you're talking about what do they believe and call it? I mean, you've got everything sort of intersecting.
Intersectionality.
Yeah.
Intersectional feminists, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's just a nonsense in of itself. It's absolutely ridiculous. Was it Christina Hoff Summers went to a conference one time, and literally the whole conference was completely fractured because you had, say, the black the black lesbian feminists were in one corner, the white heterosexual feminists were in another, the trans feminists were in another corner. It's just like, how on earth is this movement able to achieve anything? And I've said it before and I'll say it again, the biggest reason it's actually able to achieve anything at all is because it sells a believable lie. And people will fall for the lie because it is just about believable. And we
They'll
have
fall
to
for the
sell.
lie, or the greater thing is they've accumulated so much power and so many people
Mm,
that people know that if they join the movement, they could maybe use the connections, they could get somewhere, or they feel like their idea is not going to launch off unless they join.
mm.
That's like another issue. It's the greatest lie, and they're very good at hiding it, but also they've got the greatest power, and people are attracted, whether they want to admit or not. inherently to power.
Also, they're able to get away with expressing hatred not only to men but also to women. The feminist movement is both incredibly misandrist and incredibly misogynistic. If you don't go along with it,
And
it's
to a certain extent, sort of racist.
it's everything. The whole intersectionality thing is the most bigoted idea, if you really, really look into it, that you can come up with. It's insane.
Intersectionality.
Yeah, intersectionality is just insanity. The reason that you don't tend to hear men's rights activists talking about things that you say uniquely affect black men, for example, so higher incarceration rates, higher single motherhood rates, and all that within the black communities around the world, is because it's no point in focusing on one subgroup of the group you're trying to help. You might as well just help everyone, and that helps everyone, rather than trying to help one subgroup at a time, because you've then got subgroups fighting to be the most important. And to answer your question, mediocre joker, that is essentially what intersectionality is. You've got a subgroups within feminism fighting for who is the most important subgroup within feminism that needs their cause fought for. It is utterly and completely ridiculous. So
Yeah,
I
they'll
will
shout people
say,
down by saying their identity, and it's basically a badge of rank. Like, the more intersectional points you get, the higher up the victim pole you are, the more power you have within feminism. It is very, very toxic. And in fact, they stole the model from the Nazis. They just flipped it over. It's really quite
Oh
insidious.
dear.
um,
Yeah.
as a person, as a person of color, and whenever I hear that top stuff, intersectionality and all that rubbish, and they try to aim it at me, mainly in my school administration. I got into a lot of arguments with my school administration over me not particularly reporting instances of racism, and I told them that I experienced, and I told them, well, you guys have done nothing about it, and some of your staff were indeed very racist to me, and they were like, you need to report it, and I'm like, I did report it. You've done absolutely nothing about it, and then they'd hear that, and then they try to overcompensate by like something weird, like uh, something that has to do with like racial prejudice or like some sort of hierarchy of races or something. And it really bothered me because, yeah, have I experienced racism from white people in my school? Yes, I did, but I never felt justified in being racist towards white people. And what bothers me a lot is whenever I hear like sort of this line of thought that, since I'm a person of color, I'm supposed to feel this way, or I'm supposed to feel oppressed or whatever, or like supposed to hate white people for some reason. It actually extremely bothers me to a huge extent, especially because it's in this sort of gaslighting way that, oh, you tell them you don't feel oppressed or you just don't care, or like,
Or
oh, well, you need to care.
the
Oh,
pep
sorry.
talks they give. The pep talks
Yeah.
they'll do where they're just like, you have to be such an empowered POC. You're doing so great, and then 2 seconds later they're going, but like this is how you have to act, and here we're gonna explain how this is to you, as if we can't literally figure out with our own brain function what it is.
Exactly, and
Have
they do
I
that
really
so much.
dislike that.
They do
I
that
really
so much
dislike
to
that.
me.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, brothers. They do that so much to me. I've talked English in my class more than other native speakers of English. I do know my English very well. Yes, I do, you know, fuck up a lot of times. It's in my second language, but I'm fairly fluent in it. And I feel like I always got this sort of um like them trying to simplify their speech in order to like to try to accommodate me, and I actually felt quite insulting. In their attempt to be not racist, they became racist. Is in this sort of way.
Yeah.
You know, I was going to ask you if you'd noticed that woke people are more racist than others, but I think you've just answered my question, honestly.
Okay, can I
Oh,
give a story that's sort of related to wokeism, gender, and race all at once?
Oh
Go
dear.
yeah,
on.
sure. Go ahead. This is gonna
Well,
be a hefty.
Your
I
popcorn, boys.
so I'm at university right now and I got roommates. And we have one and he's cool, but he's a white male and he's very woke.
Cancelled instantly.
He's very woke. Like you have to understand something. This I'm an MRA. He knows I'm an MRA. He's told me he's a feminist. He has a friend of his who's an egalitarian who's from the Congo who hangs out with us a lot. And it's like the he's confounding to us because he makes absolutely no sense because he will sit there and we're having a conversation about like issues of the world and we were talking about like affirmative action and like talking about how the history of it actually didn't really help any POCs at all. And he was like, "What are you talking about? You guys won't be able to get jobs if it disappears." And then he starts schooling us as if we don't know what we're talking about. Hispanic and African are talking to you about issues that they live every day, but you're telling us we don't know about our own issues.
They want to
Oh,
have
dude,
the
You're
white
telling
slave
us,
complex.
yeah. Like
I
you're telling
trust
us
me,
we
I
don't know what
could
we're talking
relate. I could relate to this on so many levels. I'm like, and the, oftentimes what I've seen with like woke people is that they were, oh, I know this thing is happening in your country. Like, no shit, bitch. Yeah, it is happening in my country. Why are you trying to like? That's like the sentence starter for them. Like, no hello, no good morning. Hey, I know you're from this country. Yada yada yada. Oh, you're suffering from this. I'm like, you could take me out to dinner first. Like, what the fuck, bro? They start this conversation this way, and I'm like, I'm sitting there dumbfounded. Am I
about.
supposed to be your friend or something? I'm like,
I
you
know,
I
don't know
think
how to
that's
respond.
and it gets worse
that's.
because
Oh,
he
sorry.
knows I'm an MRA, and every time, I don't know why he insists on introducing me, but he joined like this sort of like a frat, like group of friends, and he introduced me, and he went, "Oh yeah, and she's an MRA, so she hates women." I was like, "What? What?" And they were like, "Huh?" And I was like, "That's not how that goes." I've explained this to him many times, so I now have to explain what MRAs are and what we're actually about. And his group is like 4 non-white people. I think it's like 2 Asian guys, his friend from Congo, and one Latin guy, and the rest are white. And so all the white guys are like, "But why aren't you a feminist?" And then his minority friends are all sitting here and they're like, "Oh, I get what you're talking about. Yeah." And they start relating their own issues and telling me about times they got falsely accused by people, or they like went to parties and a girl tried to like tell lies, or like, things they've seen their friends go through. And him and the other white guys in this group are like sitting there trying to still understand why I'm not a feminist because they're like, but women have more issues. I'm here like, do you not hear what your 4 minority friends are telling you?
And I think that's kind of. Oh, sorry. I think that's kind of the uh, like the flaw with wokeism, if you will, is that they don't really see. The problem is that they don't see the person. They see whatever um, label they possess physically. So, for example, their skin color, or their gender, or their sexual orientation, or religion, or something like that. And that's the problem. They don't see the person for the person. They see it through a lens of whatever category or label first. And that's how things go wrong. Um, let's take critical race theory example, and how critical race theory um theorizes that white people are intrinsically prejudiced against people of color, and technically
Moth, you're kind of breaking up there. Is anyone else getting that?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I'm breaking up.
Yeah, sorry.
So as I was saying, critical race theory and how it theorizes that white people are intrinsically prejudiced against people of color, and that in itself is racial profiling. I kind of don't know where I was going with this.
Oh, well,
That's
sorry,
all good, man.
I couldn't get most of it, but yeah, it's why they believe in blood guilt for men. Like they believe that all men share blood guilt for
Blood guilt?
men who do bad things to women.
What's blood guilt?
Blood guilt is where you say, okay, this person from this race or this gender has done something bad, therefore every person of that person's race or gender shares their guilt and is equally as guilty as they are. And it's
That
like
is so
giving,
horrible on so many levels.
well, welcome to basically traditional culture, lot of Asia, a lot of different places. It's
Isn't
a
that
big
like,
thing.
I mean, like, Al-Qaeda found the Twin Towers, but you're not, if you see somebody discriminating against Muslims for that, that's racist. So how's that any different? And even then, being Muslim is a choice. Being male or being a specific skin color isn't.
I just
I
want
mean,
to
not
quickly.
in 2023, bro. You can literally switch races. Transracial is something now.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
also, did I
War.
mention that I identify as 5'6"?
Will identify as rich, so how about that?
I
Trans
I identify.
socioeconomic.
I'll tell you what. I'm going to identify as a billionaire, and then write a check to all of my debtors and my bank and everyone, and say I no longer owe any of these debt because I identify with the money that I'm claiming to pay you. And if you disagree, then you are cash phobic.
There's actually, I saw a Wikipedia article about a lawyer that filed, or sued, God for, for neglect, I think, when one of his employees got struck by lightning. They won the case of $1,000 US dollars for failure to appear in court from God's side.
Is that serious?
oh my god.
Literally.
Yeah, I say that
Let's
unironically.
move on to a different topic, please.
Sorry.
I'm just going to read Asikratana's most recent message. Feminists, especially LGBT feminists, don't believe that LGBT and or non-white MRAs or female ones even sometimes, as in the case of Vaush, who literally claim there are no female MRAs exist, even though I am a GT and multiracial MRA. Yeah, anyone of the feminist sort of mindset wants to believe that female MRAs in particular don't exist, and if they're forced to acknowledge a female MRA, it's a case of, well, they've got internalized misogyny, which is just about as misogynistic as it gets.
Oh,
It's,
women can't think. Women can't think on their own. They're so stupid to think on their own. What the fuck, man?
Yeah, or it's women can't think a different way. They have to think one way. You know, it's like you'll get a black liberal and a black conservative, and the black conservative will be painted as an Uncle Tom and all of this stuff. because he's thinking a different way to what is considered the norm for the black community. And that's racist. And it's in every single way, that is a racist way to think. It's absolutely incredible that they've gotten away with it for so long. And it's exactly, this is our problem with the feminist movement. They've pushed all of this stuff. They've pushed the whole woke gender ideology nonsense on the world. And now some of them are trying to run away from the fire while screaming that everybody else has lit it. So, I really was it Carl, what's his name? Sargon of Akkad, who turned around and said
that guy.
people should be pointing and openly laughing at feminists, but we're not. We're laughing at MRAs, and MRAs have got a point. And everything we claim, we can back up with empirical evidence. All right, some statistics can be questioned, as we can question things with feminism at the end of the day, but we have empirical data to back up what we're saying. We're being proven right time and time and time again. People are starting to pay attention, and the more people start to pay attention to us, the more people no longer identify with feminism, the more desperate feminism gets, the more rabid they get, the more dangerous they are. And I really do think that the feminist movement will eventually eat itself. It will cannibalize itself completely.
I definitely agree. I think eventually the facade will break and everybody will see it for what it is. I think the biggest win thus far for men's rights is definitely the Amber Heard case, even though I'm pretty sure that whole thing started in, what was it, 2016?
Think so. I'm not sure.
It's kind of sad that it took 7 years, but turned out it did.
What I'm curious about is, and I'm not questioning anything, but in what sense do we call it an MRA victory? Like, is it? I'm gonna sound like an idiot, but were we at all involved in the W, or like was it
I don't
generally
think
like?
I don't think it was so much that we helped him. I think it was more of recognition that, for example, men can be abused, period, and also that men can be abused by women.
Yes, and women can be extremely violent towards men, and it's the argument that men's rights activists have been making for well over 50 years. Ever since Erin Pitsey opened the world's first domestic violence shelter, she has been saying women are just as likely to be physically abusive to their partners as men are, if not more so.
Does anybody actually have the study that she published?
It wasn't a study; it was a book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and she's done several interviews. She actually did an interview, I think, in the early 1970s, where she was talking about this stuff not long after she opened the shelter in London, where she was saying,
interesting.
If you look on YouTube, the video is out there. So, it wasn't a case of men's rights activists helping Johnny Depp as such. It was literally the fact that the Johnny Depp case showed what MRAs have been talking about for a very, very long time.
Yeah,
And
it definitely. Yeah.
And it's now a case of, MRAs were right,
One of the things I really liked was that Johnny's lawyers were actually like saying some pretty MRA things on the TV. They were actually like saying that men can be abused too and stuff like that, and that really warmed my heart. And it's, I think it was a very powerful moment, and I think it's going to give fuel to us that we wouldn't have otherwise had.
Yeah,
and it's also. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
All good. You go.
Oh, sorry. And it's also nice to see that the feminists that are still somehow defending Amber Heard are getting absolutely trashed. Because they're just, spouting the whole women can do no harm type thing, and they're really just scrambling for every gap of uncertainty that they can. I think that really did help change the tides a little bit. Not much. It's still an uphill battle, but it's definitely given me some hope.
Well, it did give me a lot of hope, and I'll freely admit, fuck toxic masculinity and everything. That I genuinely cried when he won that case, because I was personally following it closely, and I was so happy that he won that case, because at the time I was aware that men could make anywhere between 40 to 50% of male domestic violence victims, for male domestic violence victims, and I was so happy that he won. But what surprises me is the amount of sort of zigzagging that happened. Like, essentially at the beginning, he was seen as the abuser, sorely the abuser, right? Afterwards, he was seen as the abused. Now he's still seen by some people as the abused, but most people see him as, he was also involved in the abuse, which I don't understand how that works. The man's got his fucking finger cut. I think
It's
whatever screaming he did, whatever screaming or retaliation he did to the abuse, pales in comparison to what Amber Turd did.
Yeah, domestic abuse, unfortunately, is a hugely complicated issue. I'm not going to go into it, but I have personal experience. So, it's one of those. It would be easier to say Johnny Depp was the primary victim of domestic violence in that incident, and it's not the only win that men have had. I don't know if anyone saw it, but there was a film made a couple of years ago about Brian Banks, who was falsely accused of raping a classmate. And it all came out when she tried to add him as a friend on Facebook and see if they could rekindle the relationship that they were in at the time, when they were 16, 18 years of age or whatever it was. There was a Liam Allen case in which a young criminology student at university was falsely accused, and it was the prosecuting barrister who went to the judge and said he could offer no evidence for the case after text messages came out which showed that the girl involved was the aggressor. So there have been lots and lots of little wins, and I don't know if anyone has seen it yet, but there's a film coming out very, very shortly this year to do with Emmett Till, his story. So it's going to be worth keeping an eye on that, ladies and gents, around the world, because that could be an important film when it comes to the discussion around false accusations, their consequences, and men's issues. So keep your eyes peeled.
I've come across a guy on Twitter who actually was basically taking the woman's side, and it was kind of disgusting.
What, in the Emmett Till case?
Yeah.
Oh
like
my
this
God.
woman who got him murdered.
I'm not familiar with the Emmett Till case.
I think was it the 1950s?
No,
Oh no. Yeah, that might be why.
Before that.
Yeah.
It was way before that. I think it was 1940s, give or take.
Right. Okay. I know it was early mid 20th century. Basically, he was falsely accused of sexual violence and was lynched.
Flirting.
That's it.
Yeah, he was flirting with her, according to the witnesses. Basically, what happened was he was a city boy, from what I remember, and he was off in this country town, and he was with his friends, and basically he got dared to go up and flirt with this, I think it was a cashier, and he did so. He left. She accused him to her friends, and they got together and had a little murder party, and they beat him to death.
That is. Oh, that is horrible.
Yeah.
And his mother, I don't know how to take his mother in this part of the story, but she decided that he should have an open casket so that the world could see his injuries.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was disgusting.
I'm not
Which-
sure what to think of
Major
that.
turning point, though.
Yeah.
I think it was the right thing to do. I mean, it's like a mother's anger on full display.
Yeah.
And I think that it was a very, very poignant and important thing that she did. Like, she was the one who took that horrible tragedy and wrangled some good out of it. Some small amount of good. And it did change things.
The thing that outrages me the most about in cases where the male wins the domestic violence case is that, especially with the Amber Heard one, I don't think, as far as I know, she didn't serve any time in prison.
Amber Heard will never see the inside of the prison cell.
Yeah, she won't spend an hour in prison. She won't spend a minute in prison.
No. Most
Neither
false
will the
accusers
woman who accused Emmett Till. There was an arrest warrant put out for her, but it was never acted upon. They actually just found it like last year, and then a court ruled that they weren't going to pursue it.
Yeah,
After it was found?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I guess that kind of makes sense because it was kind of like years ago.
Yeah,
Honestly, she's still alive, apparently, from what
She's
I've heard.
still alive? How?
Yeah. She's very, very old. She was very young when that happened. Like, she was like 20 or something.
Oh,
But
right,
you look at pictures of her from then, and it's pretty clear that she didn't feel any remorse for it.
That's kind
That's
of
awful.
terrifying.
Unfortunately, with the Emmett Till case, there's more at play than him just being a young man. He was a young black man in early mid 20th century America.
Yeah, that doesn't usually go well.
No. Unfortunately, it's still an awful lot of. There is a lot of problems still around race in America, but it's nowhere near as bad as it's made out to be, or it was.
I would say violently, it's not as bad as it used to be. There isn't lynchings anymore. There's not, for the most part, like, the police aren't beating you up over your race and things like that. But I think what we're seeing now is because of this whole liberal conservative kind of situation where we see people who are saying words that we don't really use or don't want to use, slurs a lot more on a really extreme side because they're getting tired of the liberals discriminating against them or being hurtful or hateful, or they're really abused, and so they switch to that side because they didn't know what else to do. You got people on the liberal side who are brainwashed to think they're not being racist, but exactly what they're doing is being discriminatory in every kind of way. Just they don't see it because they think, oh, but we're secretly helping you, but they're just doing, I call it reverse racism and reverse discrimination.
It's a purity spiral.
I think it's kind of useful to not call it reverse racism because it's still racism.
Yeah. There's no reverse about it. It's just racism. Or it's not reverse sexism. It's not reverse this. It's not reverse that. It's just bigotry. There's no need of it. The best way you can treat another person is as a person. And I think that's one thing the men's rights movement tries to concentrate on, is pointing out that men and boys are human beings. We have a level of humanity to us. Yes,
Yeah,
we can be capable of great inhumanity when the circumstances call for it, but we are also capable of great humanity as well.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that really kind of sums up very well kind of what this was about and what the men's rights movement is about. You know, we're just trying to get people to see that men and boys are in fact human, as crazy as a concept as that is. Very name of this server is men are human and we have human issues and we have human sufferings and all we want to do is talk about them and all we want is equality. So this was a really, really good talk. I think that this is one that we should post on social media and post around Facebook because I feel everybody was very, very strong from beginning to end. I mean, this was a really, really good one. So I'd like to thank everybody who contributed. So these
Nice to be here.
every week we have these. Right now, I think we're staying on Saturday, 2:30 Eastern Standard Time. That's 7:30 Greenwich Time, 1:30 Central Time in the afternoon. But that may be subject to change, so please do check the announcement threads. If you have any ideas for a topic, please let us know. And don't just email the mods. Bring it up in lounge. You know, talk about something that you may want to have featured one week, or if you know a story in your hometown, or if there's an article, a men's rights article that happens at your local university, or a case that you know about, or someone that you know that's experienced something that you may think could be interesting, please introduce them here because we'd love to have guests and interviews and all things in between. So, Darkisha, do you want to bring us out?
Yeah. So thank you all for coming. As Blue said, we love having you guys here. We love having this talk every week. So for next week, we are still going to be at 7:30 UK time on Saturdays, which would be, as Blue said, 2:30 Eastern. For Central people, we're only an hour behind Eastern, so that's 1:30. And if you ever have a topic, you can always message Blue, M Painter, Ma, or myself. As you know, we're the Men Human Rights Discord server, the semi-official Discord server of the Men Human Rights subreddit, and we will be seeing you all next week.